If we're all being real, Messmer's backstory is basically as mysterious as that Epstein list that everyone talked about for a week and then suddenly just decided to forget about. That's the best way I can describe the lack of information apart from the crusade we have on Messmer. But I think I've cracked it, and I think I know Messmer's backstory, and I really want to share it with you today. Before we get any further, I do just want to say, a small percentage of the people that watch these videos are actually subscribed. If you do end up enjoying the video, and only if you do end up enjoying, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel and lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. Without any dilly-daddling, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into the true backstory of Messmer. From all the information we have, it seems very much likely that Messmer is the firstborn child of Marika. It's never explicitly told when he was exactly born, but through item descriptions and environmental storytelling we can figure it out and we can piece together a story. I'm going to be straight up. The Fell God and Messmer are linked, and that sounds like an outlandish statement, but there are so many hints. And not only does it answer the backstory of Messmer, but also the fire giants and the furnace golems which are located within the Lands of Shadow. At the peak of the mount top of the giants lies a massive chalice that supposedly the fire giants used in a bygone age. Now on the sides of the chalice are some strange inscriptions that kind of look snake-like but really can't be defined as 100% snake. But as you move further to the side, you'll see there is in fact an 100% snake on the handle. Now this seems really out of place. Why on earth is there a snake on the fire giant's chalice, which holds the Fell God's flame? It makes no sense at all, until you consider the one character who is associated with snakes and would have been alive at this time, Messmer. But what is his role in this, and why is his symbol, the snakes, there at all? Does it mean anything? Well, in my opinion, it does. Inside of the Lands of Shadows, the furnace golems follow Messmer. They are servants of Messmer and serve him loyally. And yet a curious item description in the form of the furnace visage raises a lot of questions. It says, a smaller imitation of the furnace golem's visage. Material used for crafting items, exceedingly rare to find. A stone mass surrounded by curled horns, depicting the fell god of fire that haunts the sagas of the Hornsent. This is an absolute bombshell that has gone under the radar completely. This item description basically confirms that the furnace golems are of the fell god. Then when you add in the next few points, everything slots into place perfectly. In virtually every single item description we have on the furnace golems, it talks about one point. It says, the scattered sap of the scadu tree pools deep within the furnace golems. If you then take into consideration what we were just talking about the connection between the fell god and the furnace golems, why on earth is Messmer in control of them? By all measures, by the law, he shouldn't, and yet he is. This then led me to a line of thought which clocks everything. And I think it all starts with a seduction and a betrayal. Marika is Messmer's mother, and around the time that Messmer is supposedly born, around the start of the Golden Order, at least when she assumes power, we are told that she performed a seduction and then a betrayal of whoever it was that she actually seduced. And for a long time, people have assumed that this betrayal was of the Hornsent. But I want to propose a theory that it was not the Hornsent she betrayed. I believe it was in fact the Fell God. I believe she seduced the Fell God, or at least some sort of physical representation of him, and the product was Messmer. This would explain why Messmer has control over the furnace golems, for if he is the offspring of the Fell God, then they are as much his people as the Golden Order is his. This would also explain why he has the control over fire, more specifically his kindling fire, which coincidentally is the same kind of kindling which you can find at the top of the mount top of the giants. Kindling which has the ability to burn a godly tree. A theory that's gone around for a really long time now is that Melina is in fact the twin sister of Messmer. This is basically confirmed in the DLC by Messmer's kindling, where it states Messmer, much like his younger sister, bore visions of fire. Melina is very much associated with fire. Hell, she literally burns herself at the end of her quest. Her whole purpose is to be kindling for us to become Elden Lord. Add on to that at the end of the Frenzied Flame ending, she opens her eye and it is gloam. And she talks about destined death, which is the Gloam-eyed Queen's specialty. It's very likely that Melina is in fact the Gloam-eyed Queen. The fact that she also has dominion over a black flame, where Messmer has a red flame that's got black inside it, is too much of a coincidence for me, making Melina the second offspring of Marika and the Fell God. I know it says little sister in the item description, but at least in our world, and at least where I come from, the younger of 2-3 twins can be called the younger sibling, aka little sibling, aka younger sister. You know, in my opinion, that's what it's referring to in the item description, as I don't really see any point in the timeline where Marika can just pop out another baby, except if there's a time gap in between the seduction and the betrayal. But regardless of when the betrayal happened, a betrayal did happen. And Messmer the Impaler, would have been at the core, the heart of it. Strung like a marionette, being pulled one way and the other by two different people, two different dynasties. The Fire Giants, the Fell God, and his mother's homeland, the Golden Order. The decision on what side he should follow would have definitely been hard. Who was he meant to choose? Two sides of his family warring for a battle that he probably didn't believe in. And contrary to what you might be thinking, I don't think Messmer actually betrayed his father's people. In fact, I believe he helped them. I've always thought it was strange that Messmer is absolutely hated by all the high folk inside the Lands Between. The Fire Knights generally consisted of nobles of the Lands Between, who followed Messmer in his crusade, and yet they were banished and shunned by their families for joining Messmer. Why? What did Messmer do so bad? Item descriptions suggest that Marika at one point in time really cared for Messmer and tried to cure his afflictment, that being the Abyssal Serpent. But then there's this massive grey period, this blank period where we do not know what happened. Next thing we know, she's shooing him off to the Lands of Shadow. It's two really contradictory thoughts and processes. Unless something major happened in between those 2 points, and I believe it was the Fire Giants' War. We're never told exactly what point in the Fire Giants' War took place in the history of the Golden Order, but perhaps it was far enough into the Golden Order that Messmer would be able to pitch in and pick a side. We're not told what role 100% he played in it, but if he did choose the side of the Fire Giants, we know he lost. If we look at the Fire Giants' corpses, you'll notice strange bramble-like spears which pierce the midsection of the Fire Giants. These bramble-like sorceries and weaponry were Radagon's strong suit, for example the Erdtree Seal, the Impenetrable Thorns, and the curling of roots at the bases of his statues. The same Radagon who is a leal servant of the Golden Order, and just so happens to be Marika's other half. Proof of Radagon being at the forefront of this battle is in the Fire Giant's whip. It says, "Every giant is red of hair," and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was a curse of their kind. A lot of people immediately assumed that this meant that Radagon was in fact a giant, and that he betrayed his own people for Marika, becoming Marika's other half. I don't believe this to be the case. For starters, when it says Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks, it does ellipses where it then talks about perhaps that was a curse of their kind. I believe the true meaning of this item description is to say that for his betrayal, for their betrayal, his and Marika's, he was cursed with red hair of the Fire Giants, so that he would never forget his betrayal. When it says their kind, I truly believe that this is in fact referring to the betraying and the backstabbing nature of Radagon and of Marika. I believe it isn't necessarily a species type of kind, but instead is talking about their nature. The general inhabitants of the Lands Between cannot enter the mountaintop of the Giants, so it's only fitting that their secrets would die with the Fire Giants and all those involved. But I don't believe everyone just sucked it up and decided, you know what, this is just the way things are. And I believe those select few people were the Fire Knights, nobles who did not agree with the Golden Order, and instead set out on a crusade headed by Messmer, the one who was wronged in the ordeal of the Fire Giants, the one whose own people was slaughtered by his other family. This would very much explain why all those that follow Messmer have cut the heads of Marika's statues. It's never exactly explained why. It very much seems that a lot of them volunteered, so why would they hate Marika? Well, I think this answers the question. Messmer's spear is iconic to Messmer. He's known as Messmer the Impaler. It is his trademark, it's his thing. But I don't believe he always had it. You see, inside of the mountaintop of the giants are pierced with this spear, as you have all seen probably 1,000 times. The way that they are impaled is exactly the same as how Messmer impales his enemies inside the lands of shadow. Only the spears that impale the fire giants is not Messmer's, it's completely different, and most likely Radagon's, or at least someone associated with Radagon. If Messmer was not in possession of a spear before this battle, is it so far-fetched to think that the horrible fate that was inflicted upon his family might have branded his mind with a very special piece of trauma, which he might have later used in his own form of fighting with a very similar spear, doing very similar things to people he thought were deserving. Perhaps even in those moments he envisioned it was Radagon instead of his enemies. Of course, a lot of this is speculation, but I do think there is a lot of evidence that suggests what we've talked about in this video is actually true. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Merry late Christmas everyone, I really hope you had a great Christmas. And Happy New Year, because I don't think there's going to be another video until after New Year, so see you in 2025 everyone. Anyway, I'm not going to hold you any longer. Please, don't you dare go hollow friends, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.